control this subject and to put it in its place, really, the sexual desire.
نعم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Firstly, you're right, it is the big elephant in the room, and personally speaking, I'm a person who is still young, alhamdulillah. So what I do say is not based fully on life experience, and there is scholars who spoke about this and they have more knowledge in this topic. However, I still think that I want to mainly address young people. I am young, and young people, especially teenagers and above, that this is something I think is one of the top 5 topics or issues that young people are facing and find it challenging and problematic even, which is the topic on sexual desires. You know, young people in particular, they have more sexual desires, and you know, how can we fulfill something that's originally halal from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? How can we fulfill sexual desires in a way that is permissible, pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not displeasing? No. In particular, when we live in a time that is or environment surrounded by sexuality everywhere. Okay, people, especially us in the West, the fashion industry, it promotes immorality. So the way women are dressed is a fitna for young people. The advertisement industry, the media industry, the film industry. So sex is promoted everywhere, right? And this has an effect. You are a product of your environment. It has 100%. An effect on people. And we are ordered to lower our gaze, but of course it's much harder to do this when we are in an environment like this. One of the scholars, he went to the West and he said, one of the most difficult ibadah for Muslims in the West is lowering your gaze. He said that, subhanAllah. So it's different to when you live in a society where, you know, haram sexual images are not promoted. It's different in comparison to the time and place we live in today. One thing I wanted to mention is that sexual desires, originally we shouldn't see it as something bad. It's good. Allah created us with sexual desires, and in fact, if the more sexual desires you have, maybe the better, the more blessings. Why? Because once you use your sexual desires in the right way, it creates more love and bonding and a good relationship between the husband and the wife. It encourages them to have more children, which is also good. And most importantly as well, when the Prophet ﷺ said that you would get rewarded for pleasing your spouse. So the companion said, really? Like how? And the Prophet ﷺ said, of course. If someone uses his sexual desires in a haram way, would he not be punished for that? They said, yes. So likewise, someone who uses this for halal, for pleasing his spouse, we would be rewarded for it, subhanAllah.
So how does marriage have that positive impact on a social level, on a psychological level? You know, and there's many more levels to be discussed here, but how does marriage actually address all these issues? Because
marriage is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made permissible for us, and Allah only makes what is tayyib permissible for us. And that way, you know, when you have a relationship with a person, with an intimate relationship with the wife, vice versa, the only way for you to do that is through marriage. Okay, and marriage is recognized as a sacred contract. Why? Because this type of relationship is very special, very exclusive, very sacred even. So it's not shared with anyone except someone who has rights over you and you have rights over them. And that only happens through a aqd, a nikah, a marriage. Once that nikah happens, then you can build that intimate, close relationship. Because relationships are levels. Level 1 could be just knowing someone. Level 2 could be building trust. Level 3 can be love. And level 4 is intimacy. So imagine someone reaches intimacy with a person that he loves and he trusts, and he has a close, good relationship with them. You know, they say even, you know, sexual relations with the spouse is the only way sometimes to reconcile between partners.
Yes.
So sometimes they have fights between each other, issues between each other, and then one night, they have their intimate relationship, they forget about everything, it brings them together, they're hugging each other, they're close to each other. But this can only happen through this, subhanAllah.
Through marriage.
Yeah.
Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Going back to the desires, how does it actually work? Like, what's the trigger? And sometimes the more it's like that big monster or that cat where you keep feeding it and it keeps coming back for more and more and more. How do we tackle that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I compare and I see sexual desires as exactly or similar to our desires for food. I see it very similar. And so when someone has desires for food, I see it as a blessing that Allah created this desire in us. Why? Because food is a necessity. Food is important. Yeah, logically speaking, if you don't eat, you die.
Correct.
Okay. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, rather than making us just eat for the sake of surviving, He made us enjoy eating. He created desires, He created taste, and this attracts us to eat. And Allah gave us a variety of different food and drink as a blessing to enjoy. Okay, it's not just, we can just put a injection that gives us the nutrition and we survive. No, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us a process of cooking and tasting and smelling, all this to attract us to eating. So this is originally halal, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us some restrictions, right? If I don't own something, I can't steal it just to eat, right? I need to strive and work hard to get halal money so I can buy my own food. So there's a process.
Yes.
So similar with sexual desires, okay? It's also a necessity, because without sexual relations, we won't have reproduction. Without reproduction, there will be no children, there will be no generations, and human beings will be extinct. So it is from the hikmah of Allah Azza wa Jal that He made us love women and He made women love men. He made us attracted to each other, so that this pulls us towards marriage. Then we can have children, then we enjoy each other's company. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created Adam and Eve, not Adam and who? Not Adam and Steve. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala khalaqna azwaja. He created us in pairs, males and females. وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُمْ He made between you mawadda wa rahma. He made between you bond and friendship and love and mercy. Okay, I actually see that this is from Allah. And if Allah didn't place us in our hearts, we will probably hate women. We will hate them completely. We will say they're annoying, we want to fight them, we want to get rid of them. But Allah made this rahmah in our hearts to love the women so that we can get married and become close to them.
You mentioned Adam and Steve, and you opened the can of worms. And this probably needs a whole series on its own. But what about the sexual desires towards the same gender?
Yeah, this is a good question. So desires, and we live in a time where LGBT, which means there are more people who are gay today, right?
Yes.
And this is something that we need to speak about. So,
by the way, every day they're adding a new letter. It's LGBT, and then it's T, and then it's X, Y, and then Z. It's just like it's becoming worse and worse. But I'm sorry.
So look, it's similar to so when a person has desires, okay, he needs to control it, because the desires that might control him if he doesn't control it. And there's different levels and there's different extremes. So like you said, it's like a monster, feeding a monster. You feed it, it wants more, and then it keeps wanting more and more, and so on. But if you, from the beginning, you're the master of your desires and master of your soul, then it can't have an impact on you. So when the desires go extreme, it starts desiring women that's haram for you, women who are not permissible, or indecent women, okay? And this is why a person, when he reaches that stage, is go back and make sure he controls his desire. The worst extreme, which and we see it as, going astray, okay? Going astray is desiring people who are not permissible for you, and also desiring the same gender. Okay, and we know from the story of Lut alayhi salam that the people, they transgressed because they ended up desiring the same gender, which is a major sin. Okay, we're not saying anyone who might be a believer and he has and he might be homosexual, we're saying he's not a Muslim anymore. No, because it's a sin. I compare it to the same sin of zina. It's similar to zina, a person who commits haram illegally. Also, the person who does this sin is the same. It's a major sin. It needs to be rectified, but we won't exclude anyone who wants to come to our masajid. We won't judge them. Rather, we will try to help them by fixing their desires, inshallah.
Jazakumullah khairan. Respected viewers, we're going to be taking a small break. Inshallah, stay tuned after this short break as we continue discussing the sexual desires and this big taboo of sexual desires, inshallah ta'ala.
اللهم إنا نسألك علما نافعا وقلبا خاشعا اللهم إنا نسألك علما نافعا وقلبا خاشعا.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back, respected audience and respected viewers. We're at the point where we want to know, Ustadna, how do we protect ourselves from the fitna of women if we're not married and if we are married? Because no doubt, you know, a lot of us will get young, early age to protect ourselves. But then even after marriage, we still go and we find this fitna still there. So how do we protect ourselves? One, if we cannot get married, and two, even after marriage, how do we protect ourselves?
Okay, it's funny you said even after marriage, because I wanted to address this point. Many people think there's lots of fitna right now, I need to get married, I need to get married. Then they get married and they'll be a bit surprised to see that the fitna is still there. Okay, now no doubt 100%, 120% marriage will help big time to because the person is going to fulfill his sexual desires through marriage. And the Prophet ﷺ, he encouraged even young people, Ya ma'shar al-shabab, not Ya ma'shar al-nas, Ya ma'shar al-shabab, oh youth, get married, get married. So young people who have desires, the only solution for them or the only way for them to fulfill it is through marriage. So marriage is highly encouraged. However, even after marriage, you still need to take the following tips that I would mention to maintain and manage your sexual desires.
Bismillah.
Bismillah. Number one, as-siyam, fasting.
Even after marriage.
Even after marriage. Okay, because don't forget, you're at home, but when you're out at work and stuff, you're still gonna, you know, see lots of women. You might be at work or university or college, and there's lots of women. So, of course, tip number one is to lower your gaze, and whoever masters lowering his gaze will master so many other things and will protect his heart. Siyam, the Prophet ﷺ encouraged us to fast because this kind of also, as we mentioned before, when you control your eating and drinking, you can control your sexual desires as well. Okay, and also it's good biologically speaking. It purifies the blood system, and shaitan, he comes through the blood,
the veins.
Yeah, the veins. Yes. So once you fast, you purify the blood, and it's easier for you to manage sexual desires. Number three, as-salah. As-salah, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, Inna as-salah tanha anil fahsha'i wal munkar. Indeed, the salah, the prayer, it protects and forbids someone from fahsha and munkar. Fahsha means major sexual sins, and munkar is general evil. Okay, and notice, I wanted to mention a point about salah, that a person's salah will protect him and forbid him from fahsha and munkar. But the other way also works. A person who does lots of fahsha
will not pray.
Yeah, it will affect his salah. Okay, so someone he's astaghfirullah, you know, he's watching haram, he's addicted to watching haram, or he's doing sexual sins. You will find that his salah becomes delayed, or he misses his salah, or the person is not able to enjoy salah, or the person leaves salah. So in order to improve, to leave these sins, increase in salah. And my tip for my brothers and sisters, whenever you have any sexual thoughts, because they will come, you know.
Rush to salah.
Yes. And sometimes the sexual thoughts, you know, there could be months and you don't have, you know, sexual thoughts. And then sometimes one night it will come. It will come. And this is a test for all of us. So my advice, when these sexual thoughts come, and especially when you're traveling, and especially when you're alone, right? You should increase in salah. Do more qiyam al-layl, pray your sunan prayers. You know, just force yourself to pray. I can guarantee you, once you pray, these sexual thoughts from shaitan will go, subhanAllah. So that's tip number 3 is salah.
Before, you said specifically with salah, it prevents you from fahsha and munkar, right?
Yes.
Is it physically preventing you, or is it something that it is preoccupying you, so it's in turn like forcing you, or like?
The salah with khushu' and doing it properly, it will physically protect you from fahsha and munkar, and mentally. Yes.
Okay.
Yusuf alayhi salam, he was, you know, we all know the incident of Yusuf. He was seduced by a beautiful woman, a woman of high status. And the hadith mentions as well that there will be one of the people that will be protected under the shade of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day when there will be no shade except his, is a man who was approached and seduced by a beautiful woman of status. And he said, Inni akhafullah. Indeed, I fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This shows that it's very hard, you know, once you're in that situation, and this is why you deserve this reward. But what we learn from the story of Yusuf is the following. Number 1, a person should avoid and be careful not to be secluded with women. So never be alone with the woman. The Prophet ﷺ said, whoever is alone with the woman, shaitan is the third one. Okay, that's when people get more comfortable, and then fitna happens, desires, and you know, a sin could happen. So never be secluded with a woman, and being cautious of a woman who might love you, and she's not permissible for you. If a woman loves you, right, then you have either 2 solutions. Either you know, if she's good for you, you marry her, or you avoid her completely. Okay, you avoid her, you stay away from her, because that love makes the woman weak. And likewise, if you love a woman, that makes you weak, to the point where a person might follow his desires, follow his lust. And you know, Imam Ibn al-Qayyim, Ibn Taymiyyah, some of the scholars, they spoke about love being different levels. And they spoke about ishq, yeah, which is passionate love, extreme love. And they said that this is nearly as close to ubudiyyah. It's close to someone, you know, worshipping. That's why in the English literature, in poetry and so on, whenever they speak about extreme love, extreme passion, and we live in this romantic time, they compare it even to worship. Rather, a person's heart should be filled with the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and loving Allah more than his desires. So that's why he will put Allah's pleasure before his own desires. So this is from the story of Yusuf alayhi salam, not to be secluded with women, to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and also to have ikhlas and good deeds, so that Allah protects you from this incident.
Not to keep branching off, I want to go back to you know, the practical steps of how to but I feel like the tone is basically directed to the men only. Do women not? I mean, I'm sure they do, obviously. But why is it directed to the men here?
I mean, women, of course, have sexual desires, right? And studies show that you know, even on occasion, some women might have more sexual desires than men, and vice versa. However, men are more open to talk about this topic. Women have more haya, more shyness and modesty about this topic. Women are most likely not to speak about this topic as openly as men. But also, biologically speaking, men do, we can't disagree that men do have more sexual desires than women. And this is why even in Islam, it's a bit controversial what I'm going to say, but in Islam, men are allowed to marry more than one woman.
Controversial?
Some will see it as controversial, but it's the truth, right? Men are allowed to marry more than one woman, and there's hikmah in this, there's wisdom. Because men sexually are capable right, of having more than one wife. A woman can't. A woman is limited. And secondly, a man who marries more than one woman will have more children. And we're encouraged in Islam to have lots of children. The more sexual desires you have, the more children that you can have.
طيب, how do we, ideally deal with and practically deal and protect ourselves from the media coverage, the different aspects of social media across the board, pornography, online? What are some practical tips that we can, protect us from these things?
This is a big problem, and studies show that pornography is the second biggest industry online, or the second reason why people go online, subhanAllah. And social media is, some will say it's not pornography, but at the same time it involves being social with all types of people, including the opposite gender. So meaning going online or going on social media, we need some Islamic guidelines. Okay, we're not saying to people, don't go online, it's haram, don't have social media, it's haram. Have it, but follow the Islamic guidelines, and from them is that not to free mix, not to look at the pictures of the opposite gender, not to message or engage with the opposite gender, because this will create khalwa, being secluded with the women. This will include looking at things that you shouldn't look. In fact, online might be worse than offline, because you're in your comfort zone, right? I would advise that the internet should not be used except for necessity, and shouldn't be used at night time. We should sleep early regardless, okay? So, after 10 p.m., 10:30 p.m., a person, rather than being on his phone, reads a book and then goes to sleep. So he puts his phone on airplane mode, cuts off the internet because he doesn't need it at that time, and uses it in the morning. Sharing a room with someone is also a good idea. Not being alone with a device is also a recommendation. Not eating food that stimulates sexual desires before you sleep. Okay, all these things are important decisions to make. Having good company, before sleeping, maybe listening to Quran or reading a bit of Quran. I think these matters are important for all of us to follow, so that we're not tempted to fall into these types of sins. We ask Allah to protect us all. Allahumma ameen.
Allahumma ameen. Shaykhna, jazakumullah khairan. Dear viewers, unfortunately, we had a whole list of more taboo elephant in the room questions, but unfortunately we've come to the time where we have to end the episode. We're thanking the Shaykh for being with us over and over again. Jazakumullah khairan for being with us and sharing words of wisdom. Dear viewers, please continue to follow us as we continue extracting these qualities of being a successful Muslim, step at a time, one pearl at a time, one quality at a time. Until next time, we leave you in the care of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
اللهم إنا نسألك علما نافعا وقلبا خاشعا ولسانا ذاكرا. اللهم إنا نسألك علما نافعا وقلبا خاشعا ولسانا ذاكرا. اللهم إنا نسألك علما نافعا وقلبا خاشعا